Because you're right, they don't know anything about the woman's body. So
They
that
don't.
all they want to do is gut us and put us on hormones, and all of that messes everything else up. And
Yeah.
when you really start, and isn't it crazy that most of the time you have to find a doctor that's like way outside of the Western culture of medicine that can actually help you? And I have to remind everybody all the time, I am not anti-Western medicine.
Me neither.
Just a bunch of problems with it. And we need, and they haven't studied the woman's
Not
body.
at all. No. And that's what's coming out, right? All these beautiful women that are now doctors talking about menopause that are going through menopause themselves and saying they have not studied. All of the money, all the channeling has gone to men. And then they just think of women as some smaller version of men. It's not true. It's not true at all. In our brains, what I'm finding out about menopause is that there's so much change going on at our brains, going through adolescence as females, going through pregnancy. I don't have children of my own, but it's changing our brains in such a way. And there's so much new. What I love about it is there's energy around this, and there are women, and I cannot think of her name off the top of my head, but she's brain scientist. She's like, I went into this field to study women because nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find out why so many more women are getting Alzheimer's and dementia. It's not just because women live longer, which is kind of what the science, oh, women live longer and that's why. No, there's something fundamentally going on. And I think to discussions you and I have had before too, it's like, are we actually going to honor what I had to learn and what I'm learning through my own perimenopause, menopause journey is honoring the transition, the melting down of what was emotionally, physically, spiritually, and allowing and surrendering to being rebirth, reborn, phoenix rising from the ashes. It's uncomfortable. And I think for a lot of us, at least for me, with my trauma and just my life, it's like I carried and held that in like my own little Jenga tower. And then as I got into my 40s, everything was like, nope, not happening anymore. You can't carry that into this new earth, new world that you talk about. You cannot be that same version or that same you into this new space. So there's a lot of deconstruction, which can be very scary and uncomfortable. I have had many dark night of the soul through this, and what I've learned and what I've taken is come back into your own wisdom. Your body will guide you, whether it's to guide you with Western medicine, somewhere else, but really trusting your own knowing. And even when you don't know, like that's okay. It's not a problem to say, this is what's happening, and I'm not quite sure. And I'm just going to be open to, again, I don't know about you, but the synchronicities. Somebody will mention a doctor or mention a book or mention a something, and then it just starts to kind of unravel from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the when you something you said earlier, before we hit record, man, I hate to
Mm.
have missed all of that. It's okay. Um, it's amazing how the biggest changes come when you start paying attention to the mental, the emotional, and surrendering to.
Yeah.
Because the fighting against, and even the you were like, I stopped trying to heal and just kind of surrendered to it.
Yeah.
And that's when things started to get better. Because
It's true.
it's even the healing is wonderful and we should be doing it in all of the ways, but also in the same instance, it can be a fighting against instead
Yeah.
of a allowing,
Well,
which
when you
can exasperate it.
exactly. And you think about the Western medicine model, it's very triage, right? Centric. It's very, oh, like if my arm, if I cut my arm and I was, yes, I am going, please sew me back up, attach whatever you need, like do the thing. But it's very problem solution, right? Fix, here's you're broken, something's wrong. and we need to fix you. And I think for me, anyway, not only just on a physical level, but so much of our lives, even through like having early life childhood trauma, it's like, oh, I believed, oh, I'm broken. I need to be fixed. I need to be rescued. And then I spent a decade going, no, that's not even true. And this idea of our, at least my brain, always wants to go, oh, there's a problem. We can work on that. Ooh, let's how can we fix this? And it's like, oh, what can I read? What doctor can I see? What can I do to fix whatever this is, rather than just being in it. And there was so much ambiguity in my health last year that it was like, I remember thinking at one point, I was like, oh, I'm just really being asked to surrender to not knowing. What would it be okay to never know exactly what caused my vertigo, what caused these vestibular migraines to kind of show up? Like, what if I don't know? Because I ran all the tests, right? I did all the things that all the traditional doctors asked me to do. Nothing, nothing, nothing. You're fine.
Hmm.
And I knew I wasn't fine. And so then I just found this like very squishy place where it was like, ooh, I am going to not even figure out, I shouldn't even use that word either, but I'm going to find the place where all of the unknown is okay. And I was working with somebody and he said to me, he's like, Stace, the magic is in the mystery. The magic that you seek is in the places where you don't know. And that struck me in such a way because, again, we are wired to know, to have a plan, the to-do list, to figure it
Gotta
out.
label it.
Got to, and got to know there's a safety. I work with so many women where it's like it feels so unsafe to even be in the metaphorical uncertainty unknown. And look at the world around us, right? There's so much unknown right now. What is a relationship with that? And most of what we've been taught and most of what we've kind of gravitated to is fear-based.
Hmm.
And I just remember thinking, I cannot, like, if nothing else, if whatever this is, again, I think at one point I was like, if you're here to take me, I surrender. At some point it was just like, I have to be willing to just step back into love and be like, okay, what does love offer me in this moment? What wisdom, what comfort, what support? How can she hold me when I don't know and I'm scared and I'm afraid? Because again, we're allowed to be afraid. I'm not saying eradicate fear from our lives. I'm saying, though, when we just allow fear to be the thing that drives that, it's to me, going from head, mind led living, which most of us have been in,
Yeah.
to really not just intellectually knowing that, but what does it mean to actually live from your heart and be heart led and love led? It's not an easy transition. Ooh, and at least not for me, it hasn't been. It's shaking everything to the core. And I love it. Like, as crazy as it kind of sounds, and maybe I don't even want to use that word, but as wild as it sounds, it's like what Glennon Doyle said in like Untamed. It's like you are becoming untamed. You are coming back to that kind of wild energy. And what most people think, oh, wild, it's chaotic. It's
Hmm.
very grounded. It can be. And when you tether it in and you ground into the Mother Earth energy, you ground into all of these other multiple realms and dimensions, you can have a very human experience in a way that nurtures that wildness without it just feeling completely like there's a difference between trying to control something and like, again, I just, again, in this allowing, I feel like that word doesn't quite encompass the breadth
The
and
back.
nuance, right, of what I'm saying, but I know you get it.
I do, but we gotta keep using all the words to help.
Right?
Um, so
Mm,
gosh, so many things I wanted to say to all of that.
I
Uh,
know. Sorry. I probably needed to
no,
pause in there.
no, it's wonderful. Just keep talking. Um, so we think, have you ever seen those memes? It's got like very uniform straight lines, and it says this is chaos. And
Ooh,
it's
I like
got like a
that.
comparison of
Yeah.
actually what we say is chaos and like this is nature.
Ooh,
And so nature is chaos. And
absolutely.
I garden. And
Mm,
I have gardened every year for the past like 15 years, very unsuccessfully, because I'm daring to do it by myself. And it is not a one-man job. So this year, I started a co-op. And so
mm,
it's me and three of my neighbors.
mhm.
And we just kind of, whenever we have time, go out there and start doing things. And it's on my property. And I'm kind of the boss. And I hate that because they think I know what I'm doing and I absolutely don't. And the amount of times I have to we had one of them come over the other day for the first time because we're just now getting into garden season. And she came over for the first time and she has never really gardened. She's had a couple of tomato plants, but tomato plants are weeds, so they don't take any effort. And that's why people like them. And
Yeah. You got to meet yourself where you are when you're not, you totally.
Uh, so we get out there and I'm trying to coach her on how to take these strawberry plants and plant them into the ground. And she wants to, and we have like, I'm like, okay, so we have mulch and we have dirt and we have compost and then we have ground cover. And
Mm,
she's wanting to know exactly like she wants me to tell her 2 inches of this, 1 inch of that, 3 inch of that. And she's got all of these questions. And I'm
mm,
like, okay, like you can Google it. And she's like, Google it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to do if I answer you. Like, so you can just go ahead and Google it and see what you
mhm.
need while I do all of this, or I can stand here while you wait for me to Google it and then try to explain it to you. So she
Yeah.
spent like 15, 20 minutes coming and Googling, and she came back and she was like, I still have no idea what to do. It says this and it says this and it says this. I was like, yeah, exactly. And she was
Mm,
like, okay, so what do I do? I was like, you have to listen, you have to go in and listen to your ancestors. Just
yeah.
ask your ancestors,
Yeah.
ask your intuition, follow your gut. Just kind
Mhm,
of do something and
mhm.
we'll find out together if it works. And that's exactly how gardening works, is you just kind of do things
Yeah.
and hope it works.
Yeah.
And there is
Like this is a beautiful
well,
metaphor for life, right, Savannah? I mean, like
exactly.
I- we all think there's some manual out there that we have to try to figure out what the answer is. And
100.
you're right. And we're so worried, at least for me, I resonate so much from your neighbor because I don't want to get it wrong.
Hmm.
Something in me is so wired not to do it wrong that I'm not willing to experiment.
Yep. And that's
It,
exactly what it was. So, whereas you experienced gardeners would get it and they'd be like, okay, so like let's just throw some stuff in the ground and on the ground and see
yeah.
and move on with our lives, which
Yeah.
I would have done. And meanwhile, it took her like 2.5 hours to plant like 8 strawberry plants into the
Yeah.
ground. So, and I mean, like that's exactly how life is. You just kind of hit the ground running, and
Mhm.
fear can hold you back, absolutely, all day long, every day.
Yeah.
But the more you learn to just surrender and accept and just
Mhm.
be okay with it not being perfect. Be okay with
That's
good
it.
enough being good enough
That's
and
it.
making mistakes and being embarrassed and looking like a fool because like
Yeah.
we're not going to escape that no matter what.
You're so right. And you know what I think too is our this is my life experience the last couple of years, so tell me how it lands for you. But our capacity to be uncomfortable with not knowing is directly related to our ability, right, to be in this surrender and then to experience life in such a, I don't know, wider capacity. That isn't even the best word to use either. But if you narrow your world so much that I only take action when I am 100% certain or I know, then you're going to really limit and put yourself not even just in the world's boxes, but in a smaller, tighter box. And so to me, when we are uncomfortable, it's like, oh, well, what if I did? I always say, like, what if we asked ourselves, what would happen? What would happen if I put 2 inches of mulch and a little bit of dirt? And like, let's let it be. Like, I'm always like, what if it's just an experiment to gather information? The information is neutral. It's not, you're a terrible gardener, you don't know what you're doing. It's just like, oh, that didn't work that well. The plants need a little bit more,
Mhm.
right? To your point about asking the ancestors, asking the plants, what do you need in this moment right here in this space where we are? Because my strawberry plants being somewhere else on the planet might need something a little different.
Yep.
So when we start to get in relationship and we don't believe that we know all things or know better, right? This hierarchical of like humans are the experts on the planet. I'm like, I actually think my dog and the animals and all the trees have way more wisdom probably than
Oh
us
yeah.
humans. And if we can tap into that, right? If we can be willing, like you said, it's not about being right or wrong. It's really about just meeting ourselves in a moment without all the story and narrative, which I think most of it that is created to try to keep us safe from being embarrassed, from
Mhm.
being all the things. And it's not going to actually be the energy that's going to help us in this new unfolding where we are.
Yeah, because like you said, your strawberry plants in a different part of the world are probably going to need something different than our strawberry plants here, and that's what makes Googling it impossible. And that's why
Exactly.
you just kind of have to go with it and figure it out. And she would like it became a joke. Like I kept making jokes, like the
Yeah.
ask your ancestors, not me. And she'd do some stuff. She'd be like, "Is this good?" I was like, "I don't know, talk to them." She was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Talk to the strawberry plants?" I'm like, "Yeah, talk to them." Well,
Mm-hmm.
what are you talking about, Savannah? I like touch them, look at them, feel them. Do they seem happy? Do you like what they say?
Yes. And I think that that model too, because I was a teacher for 10 years as I kind of got into my adult life. And
Okay.
that model of like the expert, right? So she's looking to you to be the expert.
Yeah.
And we want to look at a guru, we want to look at, and I always say, and I'm sure you do too in your work with people, it's I don't know better than you.
No.
I'm going to help you cultivate, right? This
Mhm.
kind of
That's it.
coaching or whatever it is we're doing, mentoring and helping each other kind of walk this walk together. But I'm going to help cultivate your own trust and faith in your expertise.
Mhm.
You know you best. You
That's
know
it.
where to, even if you don't know, you're going to have some kind of information for yourself. And so we're moving away from that model, which I think is so beautiful too, because now that we're in the age of Aquarius, you're right, this collaboration, we're not meant to be doing things alone. We're
Hmm.
not meant to be doing it in isolation. However, I do believe that the collaboration that a lot of us have been kind of, again, dipped in, we needed to go through this period of sovereignty and agency again. We need to come back in to our own knowing so that when we show up in collaboration in group, we're not creating a I don't even know exactly how I want to articulate this, but that we're really clean in who we are and what we bring, and everybody gets to shine in such a way that we're not using that other model where there's a leader who knows all,
Yeah.
and then everybody else are like it's almost like it kind of reminds me of, and again, English teacher, Animal Farm, right? All the animals were all equal, and then they start doing different things and there's a hierarchy. And so how do we create something different in collaborations? And I think it does. It starts with trusting. Yeah, Google's a resource. Lots of things are
Hmm.
resources. It's a piece of information for you, but always flushing it through your own system and allowing. I actually think, and this is part of my human design too, and I don't know if you're geeked out at all into human design, but I have a 3 in my profile number as one of my numbers. And threes love, I always say, I hope it's okay to say this, but F around to find out. Like that's
Yeah.
the essence of a 3 in human design. It's like we don't want to be told, do this, don't do that. It's like, ooh, what happens if I go down this little detour in life? What happens if I use 3 feet of whatever, 3 inches of this instead? Like, I want to know, I want to taste it and touch it and experiment with it because that's where wisdom, like, that's where it really comes from as we do this. If we really have this beautiful awareness to our lives, then we can pull and extract the wisdom, be like, oh, that really worked out, or that was not something I want to repeat again, without the track of, oh, I failed, that was wrong. It's like, no, this is how I expand. This is
Mhm.
how I elevate on this planet by allowing myself and allowing other people, right? We're so quick to say, you shouldn't do that, and that's how you should do it. And, we're in everybody else's business. We have no business being in other people's business because we don't know what is best for them. And again, I know we're doing it generally to be protective. I don't want anything to happen to this person that I love or I care about, or I don't want them to be embarrassed or, but there's so much of that that I think we've just got to like, let's just break that apart. And see what else we can create in its wake that's so much better for all of humanity and the planet and the energies that are here.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you don't watch anime, right?
I don't.
Okay. But you know what it is.
I know what it is. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
All
I,
right.
don't- I have not gone into that space.
I honestly, you'd probably love it. I love it because it comes from Japan and the Eastern world's a lot more in tune with the energy and the chakras and the chi and all of that than we are. So a lot of that's incorporated in all of anime, and that was what like really caught me in the beginning. But now the reason I bring it up is because I think it's become really, really, really popular lately amongst people. And I think that one of the biggest reasons is because of the collaborative aspect to it. So pretty much every anime has like a group of friends or like a team, and every one of them is so vastly different that it like off the wall different. And some of the animes get really wild with it and making them different. But the overlying aspect is that everybody has their strengths,
Mhm.
and the weaknesses are picked up by the other members so that together we can work as one to, like defeat the bad guy or whatever it
Yeah.
is, save the world. And
Yes.
yeah, I agree that we've been really conditioned to the triangle form, the pyramid form of collaboration where you have a boss that delegates to everybody. And
Mhm.
that's very frustrating for me, trying to do all of these collaborative projects because I'm looking for partners,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
people to boss around. What is it was
Yes.
so
No, and it's hard too, even as an entrepreneur, because I've been doing this now almost 10 years. I don't know how long you've been doing it.
about the same.
I have had a lot of frustration around working with other people because it's the same thing. I want a partner. I want somebody who I'm not saying, "Oh, wait, you have to go." Like, I don't want to tell you what,
They
like,
want a bullet point list of what you want
yes,
them to do. And I'm like,
yes, no, no,
this
no,
is the
no.
worst project in high school of my nightmares where I did all the work.
Yes. Oh, and I know I am older than you, and I lived through cooperative learning, which was a whole big thing when I was probably in high school, and everything was project based, right? Because that was the big thing at the time. And I always wanted a good grade, of course, as we know, I'm driven by, getting it right. And I did, and you take it all on. And so it's interesting to me now because I have learned through trial and error that not everybody, even if they are entrepreneur, even if they are running their own business, we are so used to that model still that people want to defer, like come in and defer, or just, I don't know if it's a comfort level. I'm not exactly sure, but whatever that is, it's harder for me to find people who really want to be at that partner level, which again, hey, everybody gets to be at their own space and doing their own thing. But I have learned through very painful experiences, it's like, oh, be really, really selective and really know what you want and make sure you're not just like, oh, let's just do this. Because when you just go, let's just do this, generally, I have found that doesn't always work out. I really need to step back for a moment. And that, again, is part of my human design. It's like, take a step back and really feel into, is this a yes for you? I am not the Now, every once in a while, I got a spontaneous something that will come through, but generally speaking, I need to kind of let it just simmer in me first. And that's where the like clarity comes from. And we're not taught to like let things just simmer. We're like,
Mhm.
oh, yes. Do you want to do this next Wednesday? Do you want to do that? We're like, oh, let me look at my calendar as long as I'm free. And instead of really being like, does this feel like a aligned partnership for me?
Mhm.
That we don't stop, and it doesn't even have to be that kind of question, be anything. It's like, does this doctor feel like a really good partner for me and my health rather than, oh, it's the first available, I'm gonna take it. And I think that that kind of, again, that frenetic pace that a lot of us have been, just we've adopted on this planet is not serving us. And I think COVID, for however people feel about COVID, was an invitation for us to slow down and look at our systems more closely and say, so many of my clients were like, I don't want to be married to this person anymore. I don't like this job. This is soul sucking. I want to be outside. I want to be walking with my kids at dinner time. I want to be doing these things.
Mhm.
And it's like, what I've noticed or what I feel is like, instead of trying to just get over that and go back to, it's like, no, are we willing to start fresh and new and try to create something different? And I think that's kind of where we are, but it's very, very messy right now.
Yeah. Yeah. COVID for sure was like a wake up call. I think it like snapped us all into like
Mhm.
reality of, oh, mortality. Right. I've been avoiding that. I've been pretending mortality wasn't a thing. I've just been going about my day-to-day life thinking I was going to live forever. Like in the back of my head, I knew I wasn't going to, but I have time. I could do the thing later. And
Yeah.
then COVID hit and the whole world shut down. And we literally, in the beginning, it was like, oh, we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. That's exactly what was fed to us. That's what we
Totally.
believed. That it's the fear. I remember the first set of lockdowns. My friend lived with us at the time, and she's our age and she has a son that's our kid's age. And so we were really blessed to have this like community already within our household
Right.
to, okay. And we're like, okay, who's gonna go get groceries this week? Like, because we're like venturing out. It
Yeah,
felt like one of those zombie movies where you had to go get supplies, you know?
totally. Sandra Bullock, she's blindfolded or trying to figure out the world out there. Yes,
That is such a
exactly.
good movie.
I can't think of the name of I can't
Neither can
that
I.
that be my
Something about
perimenopause brain.
birds.
I can think of it, but I cannot name it. There's a gap there. Hopefully it works itself back through on the other side of it.
I want to Google it, but I don't even know what to Google.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. But you're right. And I don't know about you, but when I went out into the world, because it's just one of my gifts, could feel the world's fear.
Fruit box.
Yes. You can feel it's not even one of the other questions I love to ask myself is like, does this belong to me? Is this mine? Which again, there's no better or worse, but I can remember being at the grocery store for the first time venturing out and tears and what have you. And I got into my car afterwards and I was like, am I that afraid? And like I was just asking. It wasn't like it's okay, whatever the answer is like, but you could feel the collective
Oh
fear.
yeah.
And I think I don't
I
know,
don't
a
think it
lot of
went away.
no, I don't think so.
I
But
think
I
it
do
was,
think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. I think like COVID set off that because it's dense. You can feel it when you leave the house,
Hmm.
and you can feel it in the house if you're not like doing things to make sure you don't.
Yeah.
But uh, it's really thick. But I think we're coming to a peak
Mm.
in it, and
Mm.
maybe we'll level out or
Hmm.
start chilling, going back down from
Hmm.
here.
And I think a lot of folks, at least just world at large, have no idea what to do with that energy. So
Mhm.
I've noticed it just even in my neighborhood. The road, we have like a trail, which is beautiful, block from my house, and there's a crosswalk. And if somebody like drives just through the crosswalk, right, instead of stopping, there's expletive, everybody's cursing everybody out. And it's like all of that energy, there's fear, there's sadness, there's grief, there's anger. Again, this acceptance and surrender we were talking about at the beginning, this is not for the faint of heart. Like, are
Mm,
you willing to be in that? And I think a lot of people, they don't necessarily know exactly. They feel, may sense it or feel it at some level, but then it comes out like I'm so worried about the mental well-being of people. And
mm,
I remember thinking, I said to my husband before COVID started, I said to him, the world's going to shut. 3 months before anything happened, I said to him, the world's going to shut down. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, I have no idea. Had no idea. I said, I just feel it. Something's coming and the world is. He goes, Stacy, that is the most insane thing I have heard out of your mouth. And you've, again, I get little bites of the future, not necessarily like the whole big picture. And I remember saying to him, and what is going to be is such attention to our mental well-being because
yeah.
that's a place where we have allowed ourselves to ignore or skip over or bypass it. We cannot our physical embodiment, the mental well-being, that spiritual, all those pieces really need our attention. And what are we going to do with it? And I love what you said. You're right. It was like a cracking open. And
Uh-huh.
here we are. And it's like, how do we want to move with this and be with this? But I love what you said about maybe we're at the peak because um I have felt that we're in a tail, kind of a tail end of energy the last couple of years. And there is going to be like we've had a little bit of like reprieve from time to time,
Mm.
but I feel very, very, very peaceful, interestingly enough, about where we're headed, even though there doesn't like it's like, can you feel it and believe it and trust it when it's within you when there's no evidence yet of it out there? And there is some evidence. I don't mean to be all or nothing.
No.
But yeah, it's such an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, mortality is scary and ignorance is bliss. And
Totally.
once you're snapped out of that illusion or disillusion of what reality is, it's like, oh, it's overwhelming. And
Yeah.
it's very overwhelming both mentally and emotionally
Yeah.
because, these little body containers are our mind and our feelings and our energy is bigger than them. And we can feel that. And it kind of feels like a ripping open and it's scary and we don't know what to do with it, especially since the only way you can really explain these things is through spiritual type faith words. And we've become really disconnected to that. And so even people who are super religious don't necessarily have the tools to cope.
Hmm.
And you have to surrender to the fact that mortality is a thing. And
Totally.
that's what that's it's so hard to do. It's like the most impossible thing to do. But once you do, it's liberating and
Hmm.
freeing and relaxing and peaceful. And you do get on the other side of the fear to
Yes.
surrender. Um, my mental health historically was just absolute garbage. Not good for until the past I'd say the past like 3 to 5 years, I finally started to figure out how to get it under control, and I'm finally in the best mental health spot I've ever been in my life.
Hmm.
But there were a lot of times where I was never suicidal in the sense that I would do something,
Hmm.
but I had lots of intrusive thoughts all of the time. And we'd be driving down the city streets. It's like 4 lanes of heavy traffic, and the kids are in the back of the seat just screaming for no reason, no
Hmm.
reason. And it's echoing off of the windows in there. And I'm just like, man, I could just open this door and tumble out and see what happens. I bet it'd be really quick. And
Right?
like deaths felt peaceful to me in that
Yeah.
sense.
That makes
And
so much sense.
yeah, but there's a lot of people who can't grasp So like I did get to a point to where I was like, I'd be okay if I died. I'd be okay with that. But a lot of people fight against that and like again, I'm not saying all this to be depressive or melodramatic or like I'm just saying that life is painful. Life is hard. And you have to figure out how to cope with that. You got to figure out what your strawberry needs to grow and just kind of embrace it. And regardless to whether it's dark or if it's light, because we all we want to light it. We want to blind it with all the lights and make it go away. But the nature of life is equal parts light and dark. And
Yeah,
so our culture wants to shut off all the darkness instead of learning how to integrate it and bring it into a balanced whole.
I completely agree. It's interesting last year when I was telling you before we started recording how kind of this physical breakdown, this kind of like end of, I don't know, late stage perimenopause, I was having these what I called to the doctors death migraines.
Mm.
Literally would get this almost this kind of, again, it wasn't always a headache, but this sense of like death invading my head space, my mind space. I can't explain it. I haven't had one in a long time, but last year they were like certain things would bring them on. And it was like at the beginning, I didn't want to go to, I was having night terrors. I was like, I don't want to go to bed because I am afraid of this.
I've been there.
And what I kind of came to through this experience was, and I use this all the time, it's such a just very simple, it's, and I don't mean to oversimplify, but like we're almost kind of like the big bad wolf, right? We're trying to build a stronger fortress to keep whatever the thing is we're afraid of on the outside. And we'll build a bigger thing to try to, structure to keep it out. And what I've said to many a person and myself included, it's like, open the door, let the scariest thing in and let it sit on the couch with you. Befriend it in a way. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be like, oh, death migraine, whatever the hell this is.
Or you can
This
name
is
it.
fun, right? But
Call
for
it Fred.
me, to your point, it was like, what would it be like if I died? I every question that I was afraid to ask, everything that I was afraid to like say out loud, kind of came through that experience for me in a way that I was like, oh, I am really afraid of this. I am really afraid of insignificance. That's what really came through.
Mm.
This idea of like my life's work not actually completely blossoming yet, and like just withering away and just like did it even any like does it even matter, like if you're willing to go into the questions that it's kind of like that. And so I always say, and so what about that, and so what about that, you get to the heart of the thing, you're like, oh wait, insignificance, this is what I'm most afraid of. Not even abandonment or rejection, insignificance of like, again, there's this strong calling in me, it's like you're here to help serve the world. And what if you don't ever actually fully embody that? And it was not easy at all. I was, and I don't know about you, but I had a couple, just a couple, because too many is too many. A couple places where I could go and get support and be held and be able to say the things that I was afraid to say out loud.
Mm.
And nobody had any answers for me, which is
Nope.
wonderful. But being able to hold space for that, for somebody's scariest, most afraid, like whatever that is, whether you're doing it for yourself or you're doing it for somebody else, there's such a, as much as fear's there, there's so much love. Like I realize, like love and like there isn't the light and the darkness, right? It's all kind of mixed together. There isn't this like, we're always, like you said, trying to just like compartmentalize the darkness or the
Mm.
shadows. And it was like, oh, Nate, no, we need to breathe in. Like, this is the full spectrum, at
Mhm.
least here in this experience. And the more we even just say, I'm still afraid a little bit that
Sure.
death's gonna find me in a way that I'm not finished yet.
Mhm.
Um, the more real we are and truthful we are with ourselves, like you said, you'll find that liberation because you're not fighting it anymore. You're just saying, this is how I feel, or this is what is like coming at me, or this is what, and it did most of a lot of that. And I don't know if I shared this with you on the last podcast, but my mother committed suicide. And so, there's suicide, not just hers, but in my family. So there's a lot of energy I could feel, not just even my own kind of like wrestling with death, but like, and that's one of my gifts is like other people's as well too. And it's this bigger sense of like, where do we find peace when so often, again, this world wants to take us from that or give us experiences that absolutely don't feel like that. Where do you find the peace, even in the dark, even in the biggest fear? And I don't have any answers. I just know that if you're willing to go there with yourself, it can be a very transformative experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of oversimplified it in my story.
No,
I,
no, not at all. I didn't mean, yeah, no. Because
I
I'm sure
think,
you wrestled with the same things,
oh, everybody does. And that's the thing.
right?
And I remember stuff hit me way earlier than it hits a lot of people. And my son, bless his heart, 2 years old, he's just like me. 2 years old, I walked into he was in my bed and like just sitting there crying. And I walked into my bedroom. I was like, what's wrong? 2 years old. He looked at me. He went, I'm gonna die one day and I don't want to. You're gonna die one day and I don't want you to. And he was just beside himself crying. And I was like, at 2 years old. And like I was kind of the same way. And I remember being a kid and I never did sleep. I never slept at night when I was growing up. I kind of I'm still nocturnal, but now it's not, it's by choice now.
Yeah,
Um,
you've worked it out.
yeah. Yeah, but when I was a kid, I just remember like I would start to fall asleep and then I would like because I was terrified that I wouldn't wake up if I went to sleep.
Mhm.
I was terrified that I would die in my sleep.
Yeah.
Mm. And then when I had my son, I had really bad postpartum anxiety and things just like blew out of the water, escalated with that. And I was terrified that I was going to die and leave him or, something was going to happen to him.
Mhm.
Um, Man, I would just lay in bed hyperventilating and shaking before he was even born. I did this about my husband because I grew up, I never felt connected to anyone ever. I felt very alone my whole life. And then I found him and he single-handedly pretty much helped me heal everything that I ever had a problem with. And just the thought of something happening to him, I just felt like I couldn't survive that. So,
Yeah.
in order to move forward with my life, I had to process losing him and how that would be and what it may look like and what it may feel like and what would be my next steps. So just in case, God forbid, anything ever did, I wouldn't just, follow him to the grave because I
Yeah.
probably would.
Yeah.
And like not necessarily like off myself, but like there's numerous accounts of couples who die within days of each other just
I
because
know
they,
several that that's happened
yeah,
personally, that's happened to. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
for
I
whatever reason.
love this piece too of what because I think that that's where a lot of us don't actually go. It's like, okay, if I let myself feel this scenario, right, play out, there's a comfort. I don't even know exactly. Like, there's a comfort in that's to me like opening the door and being like, okay, worst case, what happens?
Hmm.
How do I think I feel? Like there's almost like you take the thing that's like in this like a kind of nebulous, ambiguous thing kind of hanging around us, and you're like, okay, this happens. How do I feel? Because I feel the same way about my husband now. It's like if he leaves the planet before me. And I think that that's all fear, right? All fear is either we lose something we love or we're not going to get something that we've wanted to get. And so when you just say, ooh, it's like this beautiful paradox of like, well, nothing ever belongs to me, right? Like I have no
Hmm.
control. And yet, what is the thing we do have control of is like, how do
right
we be in
now.
relationship? Yeah. How do we be in relationship with it in this moment?
So you don't
And
regret it.
yeah. And
You
so
don't
you
regret
just,
what you
it,
didn't do.
yeah, it's ew. It's a very, very, I don't know, messy, but I've never felt more alive going into all of these places of fear and the death pieces. It's
Hmm.
like it has brought something to my life in ways that I think, again, when we try to keep it, I either numb it or keep it
Hmm.
in the back part of my life where I'm not thinking about it or letting it, you know, the more you just, and it's almost like the garden, right? You're cultivating the whole space. You're not just keeping certain places where it's like, no, the whole thing
Hmm.
gets care and attention and needs different things, right? A garden, not like you said, the tomato plants are like weeds, they can grow and think. So some things need more attention at certain times and what have you. And are we willing to let our like be in relationship like we are with a garden, where again, it's a fluid moving piece of energy that's going to have all sorts of different needs at different times. What does it need now in this moment? Um, and I think sometimes we're so focused on what I'm going to do in the future, or what's already, whatever shit's already happened to me in the past, that we skip the whole, like the best part of life, which is right here with us here in this now.
Exactly. But so many people don't think like this and they don't want to look at it and they want to be blindsided, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, a perfect example, my grandfather, he uh he had this weird kind of dementia that slowly took him from us over the course of like 12 years. It was just so excruciatingly slow. And he had seizures, and every time he had a seizure, he was med flighted like 4 or 5 times because every time he had a seizure, he'd fall and like crack his head open or break some ribs or something. So like
Mhm.
I was very accustomed to like at least once every 6 months I would get a call and this might be the end. And
Mhm.
so we did this for 12 years. And when he did, and I hate to say the word finally, but when he did actually die,
Mhm.
my mother, which was his daughter, acted like she was completely blindsided,
Wow.
even though she was one of his like daily caregivers
Yeah.
for 12 years,
Yeah.
acted like she had not processed the potentiality of him leaving at all, even an inch. And still to this day, we're like, it'll be 4 years in September. So it's like 3.5 years at this point is when
Mhm.
he died. She's still all the time, like can't handle it, hasn't processed it. And that's
Interesting.
where so many people stay. And if you don't allow yourself to process these facts of life, you
Mhm.
will literally drive yourself crazy.
Yeah. And it could, I don't mean
No,
like, but like you get to this place that it's like the quality of your own life,
yeah,
right, is affected and maybe influenced by this inability to be kind of stuck in
yeah.
circumstances.
And all
Mhm.
your relationships that are still
Yeah.
existing are suffering because
Yeah.
you're stuck over here in the past. And
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. This conversation brings up my own experience around. So I was very young when I met my first husband. I was 16. I needed to, oh, I was trying, I didn't even realize it at the time, get away from so much abuse and neglect and what have you. So I go from one abuser to another abuser. And though when I realized, and it was a voice, I woke up on my 35th birthday. I'm in bed. I'm trying to pretend I'm still asleep because I don't really want him to be awake and know I'm awake. Like he's awake. I don't want him in my biz. And so I heard this voice that was like, Stacy, this is not your life. This is not your life. 10 years from now, you are meant to be in a completely different place doing like do not stay here. Like I know it's scary. I know it would feel almost like a mountain. And it did feel many times like a mountain to get disentangled from him. However, what was interesting was I did exactly what you did. I processed before I left him, which I like when I knew I was leaving, it was about a year and a half, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less, who cares? But this idea of like, okay, I would say to myself, okay, you're going to do it today, and then feel everything that came up. And then I would be like, okay, I'm not doing, and then I'll be okay. Like I just allowed all that vacillation, all the everything. When I left him, which was kind of in the middle of the night, so it had its own little flavor of drama. When I left him and I went into kind of counseling because I was like, oh, I want to really make sure I get that support I need. Everybody around me was so surprised. We'd been together 20 years. They're like, she'll go back, she'll go back, she'll go back. And, actually statistics say you usually do. You usually will go back to some extent, and then maybe, it doesn't stick and what have you. But I never did. And I was in such a place, and my counselor goes, oh, you've already processed most of the hardest stuff already on your own. And I think to your point, most of us, I mean, you and I, yes, like there's something in our, soul chemistry that says we're not afraid of the dark. We're not afraid of it. And I think that that's why we're such beautiful guides for other people, because it's like when you go whitewater raft, when I go whitewater rafting, I want a guide on the boat. Sure, am I doing all the paddling, most of it and everything? I'm doing most of the work, but I want the person that's like, "Ooh, okay, here's a little bit of how you kind of can navigate that," or like, "Let's go around this way," or whatever. I want that because that's how we change the planet.
Yeah.
You and I willing, the people that are willing to say, "Okay, I will go through this. I will do the processing." Because it's going to help all of us give each of us permission to do it and to get unstuck or to get out of situations that could absolutely just rob us of such a beautiful life. And it's a very brave thing to do. And you are, again, to do it so much younger. I was going through so much. It took me to my 40s to really unpack everything that had happened to me, which is fine. I spent a decade really getting clean and clear about all the things, and in a way that I wasn't just keep dragging it with me. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people who go through some spiritual awakening are still carrying, they don't realize they're still carrying a lot of that with them because, again, it's uncomfortable, whether it comes up through the physical body and dis-ease with things, or it's a mental piece, or it's just an autopilot, like so many people. I always love my favorite movie is The Matrix because it's like once you take whatever the pill is that wakes you up, like you said, you can't go back.
Go
You
back.
can't. You can't. And so
Okay.
then you're like, okay, I guess it's going to process whatever this is. And you're really in the present moment, which is what I love about the Matrix too, versus being in this kind of sleepy state. So, hey, we all get to choose and we all get to decide what we want to do. But I don't regret any of the things that have happened to me or the way that I've dedicated time and attention to it because it has brought me to this moment. And I love my messy life. I love all of the pieces. I love my imperfections as most of the time. Again, that's a practice of doing it, but it just becomes so much, you just feel lighter. You,
Hmm.
meeting the dark actually helps you feel lighter, which again doesn't sound exactly like how it would go, but um, that's been my experience.
Yeah, you can't run away from your demons. You have to turn around and fight them, befriend them, talk to them, something. You can't just keep like, because you can't escape them. They're
No.
not gonna go. Some of the, I always talk about how some of the most well-adjusted people I know had the most terrible, tragic, absolutely horrendous childhoods and growing up experiences and background stories.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the people, a lot of the people that I know who had wonderful, picture perfect childhoods, like they're the ones that are on drugs and in jail and stuff,
So interesting, right?
isn't it? It,
It's very interesting to me. And again, I've had many a person say to me, a medium, like, how are you the way you are? I'm like, joy is intentional. Like we get to choose. Like, do I Could I live? I mean, addiction runs rampant in my family. Could I have chosen that path? Yeah, but I was like, there's something in me that was like, and again, it's that voice that I hear every so often, which I always say is kind of Wizard of Oz-esque, right? It's big and bold, but it's my voice. It's not something behind a curtain. But it's like, this isn't what you're here for. And you can do it. Like you can, the bravery, the courage. Um, you can do it. And I think for a lot of us who have had a lot of that, um, we get some level of experience so that when we are sharing wisdom or sharing our own stories, it's not, hey, I read this in a book or I know a little, like, no, we know it. We have wrestled, we have cried, we have been heartbroken, all of the things in a way that that truth, like, I think that's how, right? That's how we are able to share truth and help support other people because it's not coming from a place of like this hierarchy or the triangle that you're talking about. It's like, no, I'm right here with you. This is a
Hmm.
human practice.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of years ago, I was at a networking event, and a woman said to me, "Oh, you not everybody has your life stage. You're so happy and go lucky and all the things." And I was like, you
It,
do know my life story, right? Because, and this is why I need to get my books out there because it's like no, I absolutely had a rock your world kind of life when I was younger. That's okay.
yeah.
This is how I have come through it and how I choose to be because, again, if we allow the stories, if we let other people tell us what our stories are, then we can just be in that rinse, lather, repeat energy. And there's too many of us here that's like, nope, that's not where we're going, and that's not what we're doing here anymore. So we have to find each other, right? This is why I adore you, Savannah, because the minute I spoke to you the first time, you have a frequency about you that just feels so, I don't know, it's my energy recognizes it in your energy that is so comforting and grounded and peaceful and expansive. It's so beautiful. I can see so much of your wisdom. And again, I love that y the younger wisdom, not having to always wait till like the crone era and these, or like, which is kind of how it has been traditionally set up here. But yeah, let's let this vibrant, youthful wisdom also really implant itself here with us and work its magic.
So thank you for one. I'm embarrassed a little bit.
It's so
Um,
true, though. It's all true.
so in other cultures, they are the family dynamic is set up a lot different than it is in the Western cultures. And and I'm speaking generically instead of like specifically, but the children hang out with the elderly traditionally in other cultures. And that's because the children are seen as having the most wisdom, that they're not tainted yet. They're
Yeah.
still innocent and pure. They've just come from, and I'm not trying to like, people get sticky with spirituality and belief systems and whatnot, but they say that, the children have only recently come from the divine and where we all will return to, because it's a circle, it's the circle of life. And the elderly hang out with the children for practical reasons, for sure. The mid area generations are the ones that are capable of doing the most work. They've kind of earned at that point the slower lifestyle, and they've cultivated the patience it takes for children. So there's a lot of practical reasons also, but they say that the elderly need to spend time with the children to prepare themselves to re-enter the divine and where we all just came from. I love that too. They've done a lot of studies where they've taken, like, they've combined preschoolers with like senior centers and stuff.
Mhm.
And the seniors who go there have like better health, better mental health, they're just overall doing a lot better in all of the
Yeah.
ways. I
Yeah.
think we need to rework a lot of things. But
I'm with you. There were years ago, and I again, my details are a little fuzzy, but I think it was in Europe. They took like young, like I want to say almost like college age kids, and like they had this do kind of like a dorm where it was like college age kids with elders, and it was like such a success, and it makes so much sense. I love the spiritual component of the children, right? Coming so fresh, and then the elders like this full circle energy of that. And then the elders get to impart wisdom and the like this just this beautiful like going back to our sentiment around collaboration, this beautiful collaboration of these energies together. And yeah, I mean, I'm all for it because I don't have children. One of my fears is like I'm gonna end up, I've walked around like I'm gonna end up on by myself, and I'm gonna be in one of those horrible care places where nobody comes and, oh, she doesn't have any kids, like we're not gonna take good care of her. This is my nightmare. And then I say to myself, but create something better, right? What do you really want? And
there are
I
tons of strays out there to adopt. I
totally,
don't.
I'm like,
There's so
I
many
have,
kids looking for mother figures, like my age. There are
right?
people my age looking for mother figures. I
Yeah.
promise you, all over the place.
I'm like, I will be okay. Well, and I have a grandmother who's still alive, 101. And for the
Beautiful.
most part, she has had very minimal health issues throughout her life. She's been very, very healthy. And I
Yeah.
always say to myself, I have that DNA in
Yes.
me, this beautiful, healthy. She drove into her 90s. I mean, this woman is a powerhouse. And then my grandfather, who just passed last month, who very different, who was an alcoholic and had a lot of other things, but lived till he was 97. So I think it's interesting, even the juxtaposition. Here's somebody who was more healthy, as we would say, right? Who thrived. Here's somebody who we would probably say, okay, don't do these things, but also physically thrived.
Mhm.
And so it's like whatever that combination is of beautiful, beautiful like longevity, I believe I have it. And I believe again, and this kind of opening a whole nother direction, which we don't have to go in, but I think a lot of times when we do get older, and not that I'm quite in that kind of the bracket I'm thinking of, but like I notice either people make two choices, right? They're either like, oh, everything's terrible and horrible as I get older, and I'm just waiting to die,
Yep.
right? And then they create that kind of reality for themselves. Or they're like, oh, this is a new lease, right? Like this is a new chapter. And
Uh,
maybe my spouse that I've been married to for 40 or 50 is not here, but I get to reinvent myself. And I see both of those, and not that there's just two choices, but I see that kind of a lot in my relationships with people that are older. And it's so interesting to me, like what you decide to make that season of your life, right? It's like for anything we
it's a
talk about.
mindset. It's a
What do you
choice.
want the garden to be? What's your vision? What do you want to feel and experience when you're out there? And
Mhm.
it's like that to me, those kind of questions versus how much inches of, this or that, it's like, ooh, I want to nurture things. I want to feed this planet with vitality and vibrancy and collaboration. It's like the more we get clear on what we value, I think, and we allow that to help plant, we plant that into the seasons of our lives. We plant that into the present moment. The more life just, it's can be so delightful and magical, even, not even, as ordinary as any moment can be. It can have such serendipity laced with it as well.
Yes, yes. The can of worms is absolutely that. It is a choice. It is all mindset. Couple of things here. For one, I saw a documentary one time that we just went around interviewing centennials, which is people who live to be over 100 years old.
Mhm.
And they we're just asking every single one of them what their secret is, and every one of them had something silly, like I drink a Dr. Pepper every single day, or or the biggest factor was how much they love They all had like really big families. They all saw themselves as a caretaker and not like a caretaker that, so many of us run ourselves into the ground trying to take care of everybody.
Yeah.
But no, it was more like I get to take care of all of these people and I love them so much. So, uh, and then it also, um, the power of our mind and our emotions and our belief systems.
Mhm.
I've heard so many stories of, just for example, say you're terrified of getting breast cancer specifically. I know this story, I've heard this particular story several times from several people where they knew somebody who was just slightly obsessed with the fear of getting breast cancer. And they're like, I just know it's going to happen to me. Here are the statistics. Here are why I think it's going to happen to me. Here's what I'm doing to make sure it doesn't. Here's my proactive steps. And ultimately, they end up, I say, manifesting that exact scenario in
Mhm.
their body and in their life.
Mhm.
So, going back to your grandparents and how, like, one of them, if you, as crazy as it sounds, if you believe that all of the, with everything in your bones, if you believe that uh, all of the negative side effects and health problems associated with alcohol don't apply to you because you've got heavy Irish blood and your ancestors were built to drink,
That sounds like you got my grandfather to a T right there.
then
You're
chances
right.
are you're
You're
going to be
right.
completely fine.
Yeah. A while ago now, I mean, I can't remember, it was last year. The doctors are like, we're not really sure how, but like you're really, really healthy. Like your heart and everything is all in good
Sam,
shape.
built like a horse.
And they wanted, at one point they thought maybe he had, I don't know if it was some kind of something with his eye. He's like, nope, I'm not doing it. He signed himself out of, against medical directive, all that stuff, and he was fine. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's like if we sit in our houses and we worry about all the things that could happen to us and all the ways we're inviting more and more fear
Uh-huh.
versus if we say, and again, it doesn't mean something couldn't happen to us,
Sure.
but I always say to me, I'll meet that if or when that shows up, but I'm not going to, again, I have finite time in this day to spend my thoughts and my energy on where do I want to put it.
Hmm.
And I really do try to redirect myself as much as possible because you can get really easily kind of you think you're being helpful to yourself, but you're actually just in that state of that fear. It reminds me of, I'm sure maybe you've heard of her, Anita Morjani's book, Dying to Be Me, and her whole cancer.
Nope.
Oh, it's a beautiful story. And her dad died, and then her best friend dies. And I don't know if her dad died of cancer, but the best friend, Anita was afraid, afraid, afraid of cancer. So afraid. She ends up getting cancer, and it's like these huge tumors in her body. And she's dying, and they put her in a coma because her brother like lives far away and they want to fly him in. And so while all of this is happening, they're flying that Anita basically like goes into the liminal space, right? She's not in her physical body, but she can watch, she heard all the conversations the doctors are having, everything. Crazy experience, right? And then she goes into, again, I find it fascinating. I'm sure you do too, these near-death experiences. I am so curious when people start talking about that. So this experience where she said, all the fear I ever had melted away. All of it melted away. Her dad was there, the energy of her dad, the energy of her best friend. She said, I felt unconditional love. And basically, she's like, I had a choice. I could come back in if I wanted to. And I knew when I would come back in, the cancer would be gone. Or I could, be in this other space, what have you. And she's like, I chose. And when I chose, I knew. And she woke up from the coma. She told the doctors, I don't have cancer. They were scheduling her for the surgery to remove the tumors, all this stuff. She goes, I don't have cancer anymore. Of course, you can imagine what a Western doctor is like.
Okay.
Okay, sure. She's repeating conversations that they had, not in the hospital room, like maybe out in the hallway. They're like, how does she know this, right? Because she had seen and heard all of these things in this outer body experience. By the time they're like, well, we're going to schedule the surgery for you anyway. It's a couple weeks away from whenever she kind of came to out of the coma. And by the time they got to do the surgery, all the tumors had already shrunk that they did. Like eventually she did. She went cancer free. And the her message was out of that, my whole life I was trying to be something that other people wanted me to be, or what I thought was the good version of me, or what, all those refrains. That dying to be me, it was like I realized in dying that it would like being myself and being me, the weight of trying all of those other things, right, was pulling me way out of my own self. That if I just came back and was who I was and allowed myself and loved myself with such a fierce love that I felt in that liminal space. Went on to write another book about like, what if this is heaven? Like we keep waiting for the future to be better and something, but what if we're already in the state of heaven? It should just, to me, that embodies what you're saying. It just, most of us have spent so much of a part of our life, and not everybody, but this idea of trying to be other things. You look at people like Eckhart Tolle who had that kind of, these awakenings where it's like, oh, wait, I don't need to wear this story anymore, be this thing to get whatever it is. I can just absolutely embody myself in a way that is completely unapologetic, but has such kindness around it too. It's not like, hey, a big F you to the world. It really is this like, I am so grounded in my own self. And I'm always like blown away by things like that and reminded, like a story like that. And that's so much of the elders, right? They're the storytellers. They're reminding us of our power. They're reminding of us of our gifts. And as the young, they use their gifts. They don't feel like they're not supposed to be themselves yet, right? They don't have all of that conditioning and programming. So I love just your pulling that into this conversation because I'm feeling like I'm getting so much just personally out of this right now for where I am in this moment today. So always, you're such a gift to me. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here as well. I do you have like a time frame that you need
I
to?
need to be done in about 11 minutes.
Okay. All right. We'll start wrapping it up. But yes, children, I believe so much in the power of children that I've told so many people who are just lost and they don't know where to go and they don't know where to turn, they don't know where to start, and they know that there's a lot that needs to be done. I'm like, the best advice I could give you is to focus on the children in your life. Let them teach you
Mm,
and just keep an open mind and be patient. They're going to teach you how to slow down. They're going to teach you how to have fun. They're going to teach you how to, because, and then a few days ago, I had this like, I don't even know what to call it, but it happened. And I don't even like I was just going about my day. I went to the water tower. I have a water tower. It's a Berkey water filter tower.
mm,
And I was fixing some water and just out of nowhere it like hit me and it was like someone thanking me for remembering who I was as a child because we all start in that
mhm,
place where we're happy, we're joyful, we're creative, we're fun, life is fun, we're honest, we have integrity,
yeah,
um we're pure, you know?
yeah,
And then people and situations and circumstances chip away at that as we go.
mhm,
And that's how we become these alter egos of who we are as adults. And we think they're different than who we were as kids, but they're not. It's just they're all gunked up with all of these expectations and other people's beliefs and the things that happened. And if we can learn how to get back to who we were as a kid before we took everything so seriously, life doesn't have to be that serious. It doesn't. It can
True.
be fun. It's fine. We're all gonna die anyway. Just
Yeah.
have a good time.
Where's the hu I think humor, to your point, is one of the most sacred energies, and it gets so, right? We think, oh, but I actually always say to people, it's like, where can this be more fun? Or like, where's the like humor in this? Because especially when things get so intense. And it's funny, I married this man who that I swear is one of his superpowers. It's like we were having a really intense moment last week and he just interjected, and I was like, "Oh, is this appropriate?" But then that, right? That's my conditioning. Like, "Oh, this isn't appropriate." And I was like, "No, this is exactly what we need. We need to just have a moment where somebody breaks the intensity, and we just get to laugh and be silly." Because, again, if we have no idea when our number is up on this planet, I want to spend more of my time being silly and childlike and all of that than it is. And it's so interesting to me too, because you're right. Like I had a friend years ago when she had her first son, and the first he would say to her for years, like till he got to maybe like 4 or 5, but when he was very young, um, Mom, what about my other? He would talk about his other family and his other siblings, like, and like not like I really think like he either just came, he just like reincarnated something, or had some other what have you, that he was maybe living a parallel lifetime. Who knows what exactly it was, but it was so, to your point, honest, right? He's not trying to tell some tall tale. And then eventually as he got older, right, and it's like imaginary friends or other things that kids have. It's like they have such beautiful gifts. It reminds me of gosh, that movie with Bruce Willis eons ago, Sixth Sense, no, where he says, "I see dead people." Like
That
the
makes sense.
kids are the right, the kids are the ones that are normally seeing the things because they haven't been told, "Oh, that why
Mhm.
are you doing that?" or "That's wrong," or "That's make believe." It's just organically how they are. And so I couldn't agree more, which is probably why I've always loved to be around children too, because they do. And we were on vacation a couple years ago with my niece. At the time, she was 4. She's like, one afternoon, she's like spread out on a lounge chair, and she's got like her soda or whatever she was drinking and a snack. And she's like, got her like eyes closed. I was like, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Auntie, I'm laxing." I said, "Laxing? What's laxing?" And she's like, "You just get back on a chair and you chill, you have some stuff you like." Like she had and I was like, "Oh my gosh," I wrote a whole blog post about it because I was like, this is what I need. I need to be reminded of like creating more time for just laxing. You're just letting yourself rest and be in a moment and have something delicious to snack on. And I'm like, you're right. The youth, and I've always said that the youth is going to like help us change this world and this
Oh yeah.
planet. And it's funny because, right, there's that belief that like, what are they doing? They don't know. They have it all right. But I'm like, no, let them break things. Let them
Yeah.
challenge. Let them come in and go, wait a second, what are you people doing?
Yeah. You don't know what the right answer
Particularly the teenagers, the snarking. I love a good
is.
teenage snark because there's something so honest in that. And maybe not as curious as a younger energy, right? That curiosity I love too, but there's something just like, yeah, no. And I'm like, yeah, like let's pay attention to that. There's so many messages in their perceptions of what's going on here.
Yeah, and we start getting we think nicer, but it's really just fake. We're just getting
Yeah.
faker. We're learning how
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
people believe that everything's
Yeah.
cool when it's not, and then we're slowly
Totally.
destroying ourselves on the inside by doing that and having inauthentic relationships as a result of it. And then, we could cascade down a mountain of subjects from here. Okay, reincarnate.
I think I could talk to you for 3 straight days and we would never exhaust.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna have to do this again. Anytime I
Love
have
to.
a spot that I need filled, I'm gonna just
Poke me. I would love to. I would love to come on as much as you would love to have me because like I said, there's such a depth and there's such a, I always feel with you like there's no ru we're not rushing. Like we're just letting all that energy just kind of move through us in this beautiful conversation. It feels so energizing to me. I'm
me too.
always like, I'm in. I'm in anytime.
Yeah, same. The conversations like this is why I do podcasts. It's for me. It's not for other people.
Nope.
It's for me because I walk away feeling like I've connected with some because it's so hard to find conversations like this in real life.
Yeah.
You kind of
Yep.
have to go on podcasts and stuff to find
It's
people who
true.
are interested in talking about these things.
It's so true. I will say we laughed before I had my own podcast. All my friends, we would have like, again, I don't know, a couple friends, we would have deep conversations like this. My friend would go, "This is a podcast we should have been recording."
Yes.
I was like, do people want to listen to this? But I agree with
Yes.
you. They do. And they want it because we get so bombarded with all the other superficial. And again, I love a good fun, what have you. But there really is a need for us to like slow down, slow our roll, and really be open. That's the other thing I think I really love about your podcast is the curiosity and the openness. You can really show up and be authentic because I never feel like there's an agenda for either one of us, which allows us then to have
Yeah.
these very open, honest conversations in ways that, again, I always get nervous when the podcast person sends me like a list of questions, like, okay, this is what I'm going to ask you, and this is what you're going to say. And I'm like, that's not really how I roll on this planet.
Oh my gosh. I was telling my friend the other day, I was like, I'm gonna some of these podcasts, some of these episodes I do, you could turn it into a drinking game.
Mm,
Take half a shot because you don't want to hurt yourself
right.
every time they mention their product.
It's true.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
true.
it's so frustrating. It's like, no, you don't understand. I want to know about you and your
Yeah.
darkest fears and what you went
Yes.
through and how you
Yes.
came on the other end of it because these are the things that are going to inspire people to buy your product. Stop telling us about your
Exactly.
product. Tell us about you,
Exactly.
the person
I,
behind the
I
product.
don't know how that gets missed, but maybe there's some real bad marketing out there too that's telling
It's just where we
people.
are in humanity and stuff, and we're working
Agreed.
on it. Me and you are working on it. We're
Agreed. My biggest thing is showing up again as my own messy, authentic, true self. So, not that people need to be like me because I don't believe that to be true. It's so that they can give themselves permission to be in the truth. And that we all allowed ourselves a little bit more of that instead of, to your point, the niceness. Because niceness is really ultimately some manipulation. I want you to like me. I want you to agree with
yeah,
me. I want somehow if I think you like me, then I feel better about myself.
yeah,
If I let go of that and practice, like just be, it's okay. It's okay sometimes if people misunderstand me or they don't agree with me.
hmm
It's like, I love that. It's like, absolutely. It means you are using your own sense of truth and you are really being willing to be as so honest with yourself about that and share that with me. It's like, I don't know. That's the way I think we're going to navigate all of these perceived differences.
yeah, yeah. It's exhausting to be nice all the time.
Agreed. I don't know. I got to 50 and I was like, this is what the 50 liberation, right? It
I don't
really
care
is you.
anymore.
It's almost like you get kind of baptized in some kind of energy that you wake up and you're like, oh, I really don't care about that so much anymore.
I already
We
hit it.
need to do that earlier in life. We should not have to wait until we're 50 to really feel that unleashed energy. It's like, what would it be like if, again, this generation feels like that from the get-go and nurtures that and not doesn't have to go through all these iterations to come back to it.
Yeah, because it's a coming back to. It's always
Yeah.
a coming back to. You start completely whole
Yep.
and balanced and all of that, and you just gotta. The more you learn is it's always a circle back to the unlearning of the thing that covered up the thing you already knew in the beginning.
Exactly.
Oh, but Yes, we'll wrap this up so you can go, and we'll totally do this again sometime. For people who are unaware, this is our second episode together on my podcast.
Yes. And we did an episode on my podcast, and you
Yeah.
got to come back on when I get my season 4 going. You will have to come. We just kind of pop in and out of each other. I love it
Yeah,
because the conversations are so juicy.
absolutely. And there's still a thousand things that I want to touch on right now that I'm trying really hard not to even bring up because we'll be here for another hour.
Ditto.
All right. But yeah, everybody should relax more because the body can heal itself and it can do it a lot better if it's relaxed in a relaxed state.
I love it.
But I will link all of your stuff down
Okay.
low. If you want to tell people where to find you, you can, but the links will be
Yeah,
down.
the best place to find me always is my website, staceyandon.com. That's the easiest place because then you can kind of, it's a good jumping off point if you want to talk to me one-on-one, you want to come into my Facebook group, that's free. Like whatever you want to do, you want to know more about my podcast, all of that's on the website. It's easy, easy, easy to come in and then go from there.
Yeah, and you like all the magic stuff. Everyday enchantment. There you go.
Yeah.
The magic making the mundane magical. It's something
Yeah.
that me and you from the get-go were like, yeah, we're gonna like each other because that's
Exactly. Exactly. I swear we probably have traveled, our souls have traveled in some other lifetime together, Savannah, because as soon as I met you, it's like, again, that's that feeling home with you. I think it's like, and not that you can't feel home with some, but I just am like, there are people I've met on this planet where I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I've known you 100 years
yeah.
already. And that's how I feel with you. And I think that, again, that's one of your superpowers too, is you help people like you invite people to be so authentically themselves. And that's such a rare thing to find in this world that it's like when people really do recognize it and feel it and know it, it's like, oh, yeah, who doesn't want more of that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my goal because being ourselves is how we heal everything.
Exactly.
Right? I'm just
Thank you so much for
yeah.
having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to hit the stop button because we're just going to keep going if we don't.
We will.